When Ethan's knee gave out during the final minutes of the game, time seemed to slow. The roar of the crowd faded into a blur, replaced by a sharp, blinding pain that shot through his leg. He lay there on the court, staring at the ceiling lights above the gym, realizing that something had changed. The sound of sneakers squeaking and teammates calling his name faded into an echo. All he could think was that everything he had worked for might be over. The next few days were a fog of hospital visits, x-rays, and quiet rooms that smelled of antiseptic. The doctor's words, "torn ligament, long recovery," rang in his head long after the white-coated man had left the room. Ethan had built his life around movement, around running and competing. Now he was being told to stay still. He sat in his apartment, staring out the window at people walking by, and for the first time in years, he didn't know who he was without the game. It was on the fourth day that he met Liam. The physical therapy center was small, tucked between a cafe and a bookstore downtown. Liam greeted him with an easy smile, the kind that felt genuine. He had that calm presence that made people exhale. "We'll take it one step at a time," he said, as he helped Ethan onto the padded table. His voice had a steadiness to it, like someone who had helped others through pain before. The first session was mostly assessment, gentle stretches, light questions, silent moments where Ethan tried not to wince. Liam guided him with care, his instructions simple but confident. "Don't fight the pain," he said. "Just breathe through it." Ethan nodded, but his frustration simmered beneath the surface. He wasn't used to feeling weak. He wasn't used to needing help. Over the next few weeks, those sessions became a strange kind of ritual. Ethan would arrive early, sit by the window with a protein shake, and watch the world outside while waiting for Liam. There was something about those mornings, the faint hum of machines, the muted rhythm of footsteps, that gave him a sense of calm. Liam would walk in with his usual quiet energy, always focused, always kind. Sometimes they talked about the small things, weather, music, the cafe next door. Other times, silence filled the space, but it was a comfortable kind of silence. Ethan noticed the way Liam listened, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. When Ethan mentioned how lost he felt without his sport, Liam nodded thoughtfully and said, "You don't stop being yourself just because life pauses. Sometimes the pause is where you find what matters." That line stayed with him long after the session ended. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled across the floor, Liam adjusted Ethan's leg and pressed gently around the injured area. Ethan flinched slightly and their eyes met for a brief second. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that had nothing to do with therapy. Liam quickly looked away and continued his work, but the air in the room felt different after that. Ethan tried to ignore it, convincing himself it was gratitude or simple admiration. Still, every time Liam smiled, his stomach turned in a way he couldn't quite explain. He started noticing the details. The way Liam's sleeves were always rolled up. The way he hummed quietly when he was concentrating. The way his encouragement felt personal. One evening, after a particularly tough session, Liam handed him a towel and said softly, "You're doing better than you think." Their hands brushed briefly, and Ethan felt a spark, not of pain, but something entirely new. He looked up, ready to say something, but Liam's phone buzzed. "Sorry, I need to take this," Liam said, stepping away. His tone changed when he answered. It softened. Ethan caught a glimpse of the name on the screen before Liam turned his back. Ryan. The conversation was short but clear enough. "Yeah, I'll be home soon," Liam said, his voice low and familiar. He ended the call and turned back, trying to smile, but the warmth from before had faded. Ethan looked down at his knee, pretending to focus on his brace, though his mind was elsewhere. That night, as he lay in bed, Ethan couldn't stop replaying that moment. The way Liam's eyes had softened when he said, "home." The pause before he turned back. It hit Ethan with quiet force. Liam wasn't single. The realization was both grounding and painful. It explained the hesitation, the quick smiles, the invisible line neither of them had crossed. Still, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something between them had already changed. A week later, during another session, Liam mentioned he'd be out next month for a short trip. "Vacation?" Ethan asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," Liam said with a small smile. Just a break. Sometimes you need to step back to see things clearly. Ethan nodded, understanding more than he wanted to admit. When the session ended, Liam patted his shoulder and said, "You're stronger than you think." Ethan wanted to believe it. He wanted to believe he could heal from more than just a torn ligament. But as he watched Liam walk away, his heart ached with the kind of pain that had nothing to do with his knee. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "Maybe I'm healing more than I should." Outside, the evening sky turned gold, and the faint sound of waves carried through the open window. Somewhere deep inside, Ethan knew that recovery had taken a turn he never expected, and that his heart was stepping onto fragile ground. Sometimes the lines between healing and hurting aren't visible until you cross them. Ethan had started looking forward to the therapy sessions more than he wanted to admit. The early mornings, the quiet clinic, the sound of his own breath mingling with the faint hum of the machines. It all felt less like a chore and more like a lifeline. And then there was Liam. At first, their conversations had been strictly about progress, stretching routines, recovery milestones, what exercises would help stabilize the knee. But over time, the topics expanded. They talked about music they loved, the kind of books that kept them awake at night, and memories of childhood ambitions. Liam told stories of the places he had traveled, the small towns he had loved, and the people he had helped recover from injuries, both physical and emotional. Ethan shared fragments of his own life, the victories, the disappointments, the silent weight of seasons lost to expectations. It was in these moments, faceless as they were, that something unspoken began to grow. Ethan felt it in the way Liam's voice softened when he encouraged him, in the patience that never seemed to falter, in the quiet pride that shone when Ethan managed a step or stretch he hadn't thought possible. And Liam, though careful, let small gestures linger, a hand resting slightly longer than necessary on a shoulder, a reassuring pat on the knee, the way he would pause to make sure Ethan truly understood each instruction. They started meeting outside the clinic, under the guise of stretching sessions or checking progress. Coffee in the quiet morning light, a walk along the boardwalk after a late session, the soft conversations that seemed to stretch into eternity. Liam spoke of his relationship with Ryan, but in a way that revealed cracks. He admitted that the routine of being together had dulled the spark they once had. Ethan listened carefully, aware of the danger in feeling something he couldn't name aloud. One rainy evening, the air heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and salt from the nearby ocean, Ethan brought takeout to Liam's apartment. They had been laughing over an awkward attempt at stretching exercises earlier, and the warmth from their shared amusement still lingered. Liam opened the door, dripping with rain, and there was a hesitation, a pause in the familiar rhythm of their interactions. Ethan set the container down, trying to focus on small talk, but every glance, every fleeting smile felt amplified. They settled near the window, rain streaking the glass behind them, the soft hum of the city in the background. Conversation slowed, and for a moment neither spoke. Ethan felt the weight of the moment, the quiet intensity that had been building over weeks. Liam's hand brushed against his as he reached for a napkin. Neither moved away. Both froze, understanding what was happening without saying it. I shouldn't," Liam finally murmured, his voice low, carrying both guilt and longing. Ethan nodded, though he could feel the pull between them, impossible to ignore. It was the first time the unspoken had become almost tangible, like a current running beneath the surface, both thrilling and dangerous. Ethan tried to pull back in the days that followed, diving into exercises with renewed focus, pushing his body as if exertion could erase the connection he felt. But even during therapy, Liam's presence made his pulse quicken, his mind wander, his thoughts linger on things unsaid. He found himself lingering on small moments. Liam, adjusting a brace, a quiet, "You're improving," whispered with a softness that made his chest ache. Meanwhile, Liam struggled with his own conscience. Ryan's voice occasionally filled his mind, soft but insistent, a reminder of promises and loyalty. And yet with Ethan, every word, every gesture carried honesty, immediacy, and warmth that made Liam question the complacency of his current life. He hadn't realized how much he had been waiting for someone who saw him, who made him feel alive again until Ethan's presence was unavoidable. One evening, after another particularly challenging session, Ethan lingered in the clinic, wiping sweat from his brow, trying not to let the tremor in his hands betray the storm inside him. Liam approached, a damp towel in hand, and smiled softly. "You're stronger than you think," he said. Their hands met briefly as he handed it over, a spark running through the small gesture. Neither spoke, and yet both felt the unspoken weight of what it meant. Ethan left that night with a mixture of exhilaration and unease. He couldn't ignore the pull, the attraction, the way every interaction with Liam had begun to feel like a thread weaving through his chest. But he also knew the truth, that Liam had someone waiting at home, someone who loved him, however imperfectly. That knowledge made every heartbeat heavier, every glance more charged, every smile more dangerous. And so, the days passed with a delicate tension. Each session, each walk, each quiet conversation was charged with emotion, balanced on the fragile line between connection and consequence. They both knew that what they were feeling could not last. Yet it continued. Undeniable, irrepressible. By the end of the week, as Ethan sat outside the clinic watching the sun dip below the horizon, he realized something. This wasn't just about recovery anymore. His knee might heal, but his heart had already been challenged, tested, and changed. He whispered into the quiet evening air, barely audible. "I don't know where this leads, but I can't stop feeling it." And somewhere inside, he understood that the healing they both needed might not be physical. It might be the courage to face what they truly wanted, even if it meant pain along the way. The next few days were heavy with unspoken tension. Ethan continued his exercises, each step, each stretch, a reminder that healing wasn't just about his knee. It was about learning to navigate emotions that had grown too big to ignore. Liam's presence, once a source of calm and encouragement, now carried the weight of everything unspoken between them. The quiet moments in the clinic, the shared smiles, the lingering glances, they all added up, forming an invisible thread that both connected and restrained them. Then, Ryan came to the clinic. Ethan had seen Liam's phone light up with his name before, but meeting him in person added a tangible reality. Ryan was polite, well-mannered, and seemingly confident. Yet Ethan noticed the subtle tension in Liam's posture, the small way he avoided certain words, and the quiet acknowledgement in his eyes. The encounter made everything clearer. Liam was committed, and no matter how complicated their feelings had become, there was a line that could not be crossed. After the session, Ethan left quietly, the echo of his footsteps on the hallway floor matching the heaviness in his chest. He wandered along the boardwalk as dusk settled, waves lapping gently against the shore. The sea seemed endless, a mirror to the swirl of emotions inside him. He knew he had to confront the truth within himself. He could not ask Liam to change his life, and he could not hold on to a hope that wasn't real. That evening, as the sky turned a deep orange and the first stars began to appear, Liam found him sitting on a bench by the water. The distance between them felt measured, cautious, yet inevitable. He sat beside Ethan, careful not to invade the space, and for a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the waves filled the silence, a natural rhythm that somehow mirrored the steady pull of their hearts. "I wanted to see you before you left for the week," Liam finally said, his voice low and deliberate. "There's something I need to tell you. Something you already know, I think." Ethan turned slightly, meeting the edge of his gaze, careful not to let the emotions show too clearly. "You don't have to," Ethan said quietly. He already knew in the deepest part of himself that this moment was inevitable. "I know the truth." Liam nodded, the weight of relief and sorrow mingling in his expression. I care about you more than I should, and I think you feel the same. But there's Ryan, and he's part of my life for better or worse. I can't ask you to step into that, and I can't leave him without reason." Ethan felt a mixture of understanding and ache. It was painful, yes, but there was also clarity. Sometimes love was not about possession or fulfillment. It was about honesty, about knowing when to let someone go and when to let yourself grow. "I care about you too," Ethan admitted. his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "And I'm not angry. I think maybe this was always meant to teach us something. About trust. About feeling. About moving forward, even when it hurts." They sat in silence, watching the horizon where the sun had disappeared completely, leaving only a gentle twilight. There was no rush to fill the space with words. Words could not contain what they had shared. Their connection was deeper than speech, and yet, in that quiet, both felt the release of the tension that had been building, a bittersweet sense of closure. In the following weeks, Ethan continued his recovery. Each step, each stretch, was now colored by a sense of self-awareness and emotional growth. He no longer felt the pull of longing in every glance. Instead, he carried the memory of the connection with Liam as a lesson in vulnerability, honesty, and the delicate balance of human hearts. Liam, too, returned to Ryan, but with a renewed sense of awareness. He approached the relationship with honesty, carrying forward the clarity that only brief yet profound emotional intimacy could provide. He was more present, more thoughtful, and while the spark with Ethan remained a memory, it became a catalyst for growth rather than regret. Months later, Ethan jogged along the same boardwalk where he had first confronted the intensity of his emotions. The air was crisp, the waves gentle, and the sun painted the horizon in soft gold. He smiled faintly to himself, remembering the lessons learned through pain, healing, and unexpected connection. His knee was strong again, but more importantly, his heart had been tested and strengthened. Sometimes, he reflected, life had a way of showing you what truly mattered. Not every connection could be held, and not every love could be pursued. But every encounter, every moment of honesty, left a mark that shaped who you became. Ethan whispered into the morning breeze, almost as if speaking to Liam across the distance. "Thank you for teaching me how to feel again." And as he continued his run along the shore, the rhythm of his steps matched the rhythm of his heart, steady, strong, and ready to move forward. The story of what had almost been love lingered gently in his memory, a reminder that sometimes the deepest connections are the ones that guide us to ourselves. He had fallen, yes, both literally and emotionally, but in the process, he had learned to rise in ways he never imagined.